Welcome back to the Language Input Podcast, my dear language learning master. And today we're having episode number 18 of this podcast, in which that I'm going to address the most common questions and misconceptions when it comes to the language learning process. Okay? Because, I've talked about it many times, but, I'm pretty sure we can all learn any language while enjoying the process, every step of the way. Yeah. Like that's the goal with my project, to help as many people as possible realize that, they too can learn any language while enjoying the process. Okay, and with that being said, as usual, let me know in the comment section down below whether you agree with me with this idea, whether you disagree, whether you have any other idea for future episodes. All right. So yeah, thank you in advance for that, because you'll be giving me ideas for future episodes. All right, and I'll be more than happy to help you out. All right, so let's get into today's episode. And in today's episode, I want to talk about stories. Yeah, in general, I want to talk about why stories are so amazing, so incredible when it comes to language learning. I mean, first of all, that's pretty much how we learn a language as a kids, excuse me. Our parents, grandparents, uncles, aunts, cousins, they tell us stories. We read books with them. And if you look at it, if you pay attention to it, that's how we communicate as well. When we want to talk about something that we did or something that happened to us, we tell stories, right? So that's actually the way we communicate on a daily basis for most of the time, right? So that in itself is really powerful, because it's nothing but the same way we communicate every single day in our native languages or whatever the language, right? But besides that, I want to focus on language learning a little bit more. And, there are many reasons why they're super interesting and super useful when it comes to language learning. Well, first of all is, just for the fun of it. Like, you can create, you can create pretty much any story. You can listen to pretty much any story, any type of story you are interested in. There's so much content out there on the internet, in every possible topic you can think of, right? So, you're gonna be able to listen to your favorite stories, or listen to your favorite topics, or listen to your favorite speakers while telling a story, and learn the language at the same time. So the fun part of it, is just crucial to me. And, that's something we always have to have in mind, to keep in mind, because if you're enjoying the process, as I'm always saying, if the content, if the resource is compelling, your motivation is going to stay pretty high, right? And so that's one of the main reasons why I think stories are absolutely amazing. But apart from that, the good thing about stories as well is that they help us focus on the message as opposed to form, which is what we're used to doing in our traditional grammar classes, right? And I'm always talking about that. Like the key to the language learning process is to focus on the message, which is the most important thing, of course. And if you understand what you're listening to or what you're reading, you're learning the language. But because of the traditional grammar approach, we're so used to focusing on grammar, on the specific endings to, or on a specific grammar tense, a specific conjugation, etc., that we miss the point. We miss the most important thing, which is the message, right? And so that's what we need to focus on understanding the message, understanding what's going on in the story, or understanding what's going on in the conversation. And again, it doesn't mean we need to understand 100% of the words. It just means we need to understand, like I said, the message, what's going on, what's all about, right? And with that in mind, stories are absolutely great, even more so if they're science fiction or the more abstract they are, actually, I think the better when it comes to language learning, because I see it with my students in my classes, and I see it in myself when I'm learning another language, or just simply when I'm watching a series or a movie. That I'm listening to the story, or my students are listening to a story, and they and I we're sort of picturing the story in our heads, picturing what's going on. So we're actually worried about, when I'm creating a story with my students, me as a teacher and them as students, we're picturing the story in our heads, like I said, in our minds. And thanks to story, we help our mind. I'm just gonna try to explain it. We help our mind focus on the message, because that's the most important thing, but that's the most compelling thing in a story as well. So we're not worried about specific words or specific conjugations, specific word endings, but rather we're focused on the story. We're paying attention to what's going on to the main character. We're thinking about ideas so he or she can find a solution to her problem. We're thinking about what's going to happen with the main character's friend. If they travel to this country or the other country, what the consequences are going to be. So we're sort of creating the story in our mind. We're picturing the characters in our mind. We see what's going on in our minds, and so on. And that helps us tremendously when it comes to, like I said, focusing on the message, which is the most important thing. And I think this is very important, not only in itself, but also for, I was going to say for those who had traditional grammar classes, but that's pretty much 100% of the population, right? So I get asked a lot, there are a lot of people who finally realized that, the traditional grammar approach didn't help them, but they still tell me that because of it, even when trying to enjoy a series, documentary, or whatever it is, they're still focusing on grammar, or their mind is still focusing on specific words and so on. And first of all, that's completely normal, because like I said, that's a consequence of the traditional grammar approach. There's nothing wrong with you, all right? We've all been there, and honestly, I'm totally convinced by this approach, and I've been doing it for a long time, and I still find myself at times focusing on specific words. So I have to kind of remind myself all the time, like, hey, wait. It's okay. You're understanding the message. It's working. You're learning the language. All right. And so like I was saying, many people ask me, okay, I totally understand what you're saying. I totally buy into it. But how can I switch from grammar, mindset, let's put it that way, to a more relaxed mindset in which I just care about the message. I just focus on understanding what's going on in the story. And I think stories are really helpful in that regard, because like I said, subconsciously or rather automatically, they help us focus on the message. And the more bizarre details they have, the more fictional they are, the more absurd, the more abstract they are, the better, I think, because it's gonna be so weird that our mind is gonna focus on the message even more. So that's why I just love them, whether I'm enjoying them myself when learning a new language, whether I'm using them to teach Spanish to other students, to my students, or similar situations, right? So, my goal with this particular episode is to, well, you probably know already that stories are super useful, if you're following my podcast and my channel. But yeah, I just wanted to provide a little bit of context or a little bit of background on why I use stories, why I think they're super useful. And, with stories, pretty much, like I said at the beginning, we communicate with stories all the time. So within a story, we can replicate all sorts of conversations, all sorts of situations, all sorts of even all sorts of verb tenses, even though I'm not focusing on that, and I don't want my students to focus on that, but they're going to listen to, present, future, past, and everything that there is to that there is to learn within the context of a story, because, a story has it all. Like I said, it's a real life conversation. It's, pretty much the same type of experience. So, yeah, to sum things up, one, we communicate with stories all the time. So, stories are pretty close to our real life conversation with friends, family, etc. So that's why they're useful and compelling. Second thing is, because of their nature, especially those science fiction or abstract ones, they're going to help us focus on the message as opposed to form. And again, focusing on the message is absolutely crucial, all right, to the success of the process. Yeah, and those are the two most important points. But also, like I said, for someone learning a foreign language, if they're on an intermediate level, for instance, or even beginner or even advanced, certain real life situations, scenarios might not be comprehensible yet. And to me, stories are a great resource or a great idea to replicate a real life conversation, or, it's like the closest thing to a real life conversation that we can do in a language class or when learning on your own, right? While still keeping it super interesting and compelling and, and having fun. Because there are other ideas we can use, within the classroom, but that might not be as interesting or as close to a real life conversation as stories are, right? And again, that's an extra point to stories, going to stories, right? So yeah, whether you're attending your favorite language classes, or you're watching YouTube videos, you're reading a book, whatever you're doing, keep reading, keep listening to stories. They're just tremendously helpful. And if you're a language teacher, use them. All right, help your students with stories, because they're tremendously useful and fun and interesting. Let's get back to our younger days as well. Let's play. Let's have fun. There's nothing wrong with it. Whether you're 15, 35, 80, 70, we all like stories. There's nothing wrong with them. All right. So yeah, that's the topic of today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it as usual. And yeah, don't hesitate to let me know in the comment section below, if you're listening to it on YouTube or a platform in which you can leave your messages. Yeah, let me know whether you agree with me, whether you think they're unbelievable, whether you found out something new about them in this episode. That I'll be glad if that's the case. And yeah, once again, any idea you have for future episodes, shoot it my way, because I'll be happy to help you out, and you'll be giving me ideas, like I said. So thank you in advance for that, and I wish you a good day, my dear language learning master, wherever you might be. And yeah, we'll see each other in the next one. Well, we'll hear each other. No, you'll hear me actually in the next episode, number 19. All right. And yeah, be well, everyone. Bye bye.